Welcome everyone to the RSC webinar for schools that are working through RSC for the first time. In this webinar we'll talk about the prep for your first advisory council meeting, and during that meeting you'll be introducing RSC and school counseling to your council. My name is Sue Reynolds and I'm president of the American Student Achievement Institute. Okay, so here's today's agenda. The goal for our webinar, our time together, is to prepare you to facilitate your first advisory council meeting. And again, the topic of that meeting is just to introduce school counseling and RSC to your council members. Remembering that many of your council members are not, well, probably most of them are not school counselors, some are not even educators. So we're really wanting to talk about vocabulary and just the concepts of what is school counseling. So in our webinar together today, we're going to do a quick review of RSC. Then we'll walk through the manual resources that you have for this first meeting. We'll actually walk through the first meeting as though I were facilitating it. And then we'll go to the process page and learn how to document your first meeting. And then we'll talk about your submissions and the rubric for those. So, okay, so that's the agenda for the next hour. Just as a reminder, if something's confusing to you, please do type in a question, or afterwards you're always welcome to call Debbie Howell, contact her, and she'll be more than happy to help you. So, okay, a little bit of review. Our basic belief, our foundational belief is that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. So we've known for like years that school counseling impacts academic achievement, but this is how it does. This is why it does. Because when students are involved in really good school counseling programs, they make better choices, and as a result of those sound choices, achievement goes up. So this is another kind of way to say the same thing. We call it our school counseling impact pyramid. And it's basically when students are involved in sound guidance and counseling programs, they make better choices, and as a result, achievement goes up. So, as you're designing your school counseling program this year, we're actually going to take this pyramid and we're just going to work it backwards. So when we get to the goals step, we're going to say, okay, what are our school's academic achievement goals that are found in your school improvement plan? So it may be something like increasing the percentage of students who pass the Algebra 1 and of course assessment. Then we're going to say, okay, in order for kids to pass that assessment, what choices do they have to make? And you'll come up with things like turn in their homework and ask questions in class and not punch somebody in the nose when they're mad, and to not have so many social personal issues that they can't focus at school. So we'll really focus on the student choices that we want kids to make. And then we'll look at how do we design a guidance and counseling program that will help kids make those choices. So that's what RSC is all about, to help kids make good choices. So in the process, the first couple of slides I put in with a background of green because they're finished. So you got ready and you've put together your steering team, you've collected your data, you surveyed your students, you've done some self-studies, and you have found members to be on your advisory council. Before we got on the webinar, I went and checked some of your advisory councils for the schools that are participating right now. You guys did a wonderful job at putting your advisory councils together. I was able to see lots of community representation, lots of business and industry representation, local government, as well as parents and educators and administrators. So you really, really, really did a nice job. Now, that said, a few of you are behind and you don't have that either completed or it's completed and not submitted. So just as a reminder, we don't mind if work is like 1 month behind, but if you get 2 months behind, our experience has been that it's very difficult for you to catch up. So if you start to get behind now, beyond, not putting your advisory council together yet, we're going to go into what we call nag mode, because we're actively monitoring your work. We're not just waiting for you to submit stuff for us. We're going in and we're checking from time to time to see how you're doing. So at this point, if we're checking and your advisory council is not submitted yet, Debbie's going to maybe give you a friendly email or a phone call and just remind you that if you get 2 months behind, it's hard to catch up. So let's get going and get that advisory council submitted. But again, if you're not at that step, that's okay. But let's not get any more behind than you are. So let's get that advisory council in right now. So, okay, so then the next step is to meet with your advisory council and do the introduction. So that's what we're going to do today. And then in September, you'll have that meeting with your advisory council. Then in October, we'll meet with the council again for meeting 2, and you'll talk about your dreams as a council. What are your dreams for kids? What is your vision? Then in November, we'll say, okay, if those are our dreams for kids, what choices do kids need to make? Those are our program goals. So you'll identify all the choices you want kids to make. Those are your program goals. And then in December, we're going to take a subset of those program goals and make them your priority goals. We'll pull in data here to show where your kids are making good choices already and where they're not. And then we'll set your priority goals. Before we get to the priority goals, though, we're going to try to expand your resources, especially time, because we know if we can get more time for you as a counselor, if you can get more energy, more time, more funding, that you're going to be able to tackle a lot more priority goals than you would if you didn't have any time or funding or energy. So we slip in this little step of how can we get more time and energy, and then we say, okay, out of all those program goals, how many could we do as priority goals? And it may just be 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. It's not going to be a lot, because what we're saying to everybody is that these priority goals, whatever they are, we're promising ourselves and we're promising our council and our kids that we're going to work our tails off to help every single student in the building make that choice, whatever it is. So, okay, so that's priority goals. Then in February, we're going to start looking at why aren't kids making those choices? If your priority goal is that the students would submit a FAFSA, then we're going to start looking at why aren't kids submitting a FAFSA? It may be one of 3 reasons. 1, they don't know what a FAFSA is. They don't have information that they need. 2, there's a social personal issue that's interfering with their ability to make good choices in general. And 3, we haven't given them the opportunity to obtain and submit a FAFSA. So it's either a knowledge issue, a social personal issue, or an opportunity issue. And when we get to this step, we'll pull in more data from your surveys that will help us understand why our kids aren't making these priority goals. Once we know why the kids aren't making the choices that we think they need to make, then in March, we'll come back with your council and we'll say, okay, what are we going to do about it? So kids don't know what a FAFSA is. What are we going to do about it? What can the counselors do? What could the council do? What could teachers do? So what could the community do? So we're really looking here at what can everybody do to help kids, to help address whatever the root cause is. So, okay, that's activities, and that is the last meeting with your council. That will happen in March. And then after that, the counselors will get ready to implement the activities. So you'll write lesson plans, you'll create an implementation calendar, a program calendar, and then you create a budget so that you have the funding that you need to support your program. So, okay, so that's kind of the process. Let's stop real quickly here. If you have any questions, madly type them in. And Debbie, if you'll jump in here and let me know, do we have any questions so far?
Nope, everybody seems to be good.
Okay, that's good. Not surprising because all we've done so far is review. So now let's go into preparing for your first meeting with your council. Our goal is that when you leave this webinar that you are feeling confident that you can run this meeting, facilitate this meeting, that everything's going to go smoothly. If you have the littlest little question, please ask us, because there's a lot of people on this webinar. If you have the question, someone else is going to have the same question. So please keep those questions coming. Okay, so the topic of your first meeting with your council is to introduce school counseling and introduce RSC. And specifically, we're wanting to introduce terminology here. So I want to, first of all, do a walkthrough of the manual so you'll see the resources that you have. So I'm going to log in here. I've actually already logged in. Let me get back to the top of this page. Okay, so when you log in, I'm logged in as New Albany Senior High School. I think there's a couple of counselors from New Albany that are participating today. You guys did a wonderful job at the last step. So when you log in, you'll go to your front page, and then remember we're looking at these tabs, the top 3 tabs. So I'm going to go to the manual, and I'm going to scroll down. Notice that the first year tab is highlighted. If it's not, let Debbie know and we'll show you how to change that. But it should be highlighted if you've entered everything on the uses page correctly. So I'm scrolling down to Meeting 1, RSC Intro. And you'll see here that we have handouts that you'll pass out to your council members. And then we have some tools that are going to help you with this meeting. So I'm going to very, very quickly walk through each of these. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each of them, and in future webinars we won't do this at all, but since this is the first time that you've done a meeting, I want to make sure that we looked at each of these. So, and some of them I won't open up, I'll just tell you about. So the first one is a cover page. You can, open that. Well, here, let me just open it real quickly. When we open that one, you'll see, this is what it looks like. And what I would do if I were you is take ACE's name off of this, put your school's name on it, put your school's logo on it. And you don't have to use this cover page. We just tried to do some, save some time for you. And again, you have our permission to edit anything. So if you, take our logo off, put your logo on, just use this as kind of a template to get you started. Okay, so the agenda. The agenda, when you open that, this is what it looks like. And what I want to show you with this is what we've done here is we've given you the agenda topics, and then we've told you how much time we think that this portion will take. So this, we think that the warm-up and the welcome is going to take you 20 minutes. So we don't know what time your meeting is going to start. So if your meeting is going to start at 6 o'clock, if your meeting is going to start at 6 p.m., then you would just change this time to 6 p.m. And then that's going to take you about 20 minutes. So the next time would be 6:20. If you start your meeting at 10 in the morning, you're going to change those times accordingly. So the other thing is that all of our council meetings are designed to be 2-hour meetings with a break in the middle. Some schools tell us that their councils would rather have 2 1-hour meetings. And if that's the case, you can just, wherever the break is, then that is where you would switch this into 2 1-hour meetings. And schools have been kind of creative about how to do this. So, just whatever works best for you. So to go through the agenda, we have welcome and introductions. We have an intro to RSC and school counseling. Then that intro continues after the break. And then there's 2 activities with your council. At this meeting, we talk at the council a lot, but we want to also show them that we're really there to listen. And after this meeting, we're in listen mode always. So what we're going to listen to this time is what do they want their group norms to be. That'd be things like showing up on time and not interrupting each other and putting kids first, that kind of stuff. And then the one activity that we're going to do is to have them brainstorm what are the benefits of school counseling. So we want your council to think right from the beginning, oh, there's some good things about school counseling that are going to help kids, they're going to help teachers, going to help parents. So we'll do an activity here, and this will turn into your benefits statement to this brainstorm. So, okay, and again, we're including this step. It's really important to do this right up front because we want to show people right away that we're there to listen. We're not there to talk at them. And for most people, when they come to meetings at school, they get talked at, but we're there to listen. So this may be a little bit different than previous meetings that they've been to at the school. So, okay. Then the roster, that is one that's very important to this meeting. And it looks like this. And what I would do is I would fill out the roster ahead of time. So you're letting everybody know how they can communicate with each other between meetings if they want to. So no requirement to, but they can. So you're putting in the person's name, their phone number, their email. If you don't want to share people's phone number and emails, just take those columns off and just use name. But the perspective is really important because what we're going to do is, as part of the warm-up, we're going to ask each person to introduce themselves and then to report what perspective do you bring to the table. Could it be that you bring the perspective of a third grade parent, or you bring the perspective of a Hispanic parent, or a student, or from the business community. So you give a couple of examples, and then as each person's talking, whatever they say their perspective is, you write down. So it may be that you invited Jane Doe to be there because Jane is the parent of a free and reduced lunch student, but Jane says I could represent third grade parents. That's fine. Just write down whatever they say. You know that they're there because they're also low-income parent, but whatever they say is what we want to write here. What we're trying to do with this is we want Jane Doe to know that if she's not there, third grade parents aren't represented. That voice is missing from the table. That will get people to come to more than one meeting because they realize that you're there to listen, and that if they're not there, there's a voice missing. They have to be there because they're representing those people. And you can play that up as you're, talking with folks. You can explain, okay, these are your perspectives, and if any of you aren't here at the next meeting, we're going to be missing that voice. So, please come back. It's really important. So, okay. So that's that one. The presentation I'm going to go through in a minute. This is just a diagram of the process, and then the meeting dates is one, again, that you would have filled out ahead of time. And it just looks like this, where you put the date in, and then the first meeting, September meeting that you're at, that date would be here, and then you're giving them the dates for the entire year so they can get them on their calendar and then schedule all the rest of their meetings around that meeting. Just make sure that whatever date you're picking for this meeting, that it comes after our training. So you wouldn't want to have your vision meeting before you got trained on how to do that meeting. So just make sure those come after the training. Okay, so that's that. So those are the handouts, and you don't have to use all of them. If you don't want to pass out the diagram, that's fine. If you don't want to have a cover page, fine. But they're just there as resources for you. Now, the tools, I want to look at those. These will be different for every meeting. However, the first one and the last one are always the same. So prep for meeting 1, let's open that up. On this tool, what that is going to show you are the steps. And then this is like I'd sit down with your steering team before as you're starting to plan for this first meeting, and say, okay, when's the date going to be? Put that in there. Brainstorm the advisory council meeting members. You've already done that. Call potential members. You've done that. Set dates for the year. If you haven't done that, who's going to be responsible for doing that and when's it going to happen by. Determine where you're going to have the meeting. Send an intro letter to the advisory council members. Prepare the agenda, prepare the roster, print your handout packet, just the things that you need to do. There's 2 posters that I'll show you in a minute that you'll need to blow up. Create name tags if you want to. This is very important. Call the advisory council members on the phone the day before the first meeting. When we have councils that get the best attendance at their council meetings, there are folks that have called people on the phone. Maybe send an email reminder too. But when someone calls you on the phone and you say to them, voice to voice, yes, I will be there tomorrow, they're there. And it's a lot harder to ignore a meeting if you've said voice to voice to someone, yes, I will be there. And then you can, get all excited. Oh, I'm so glad you're going to be here. And, it just kind of sets the tone when you've done that phone call. So if you've got 4 members of your steering team, split up the council list and just give everybody a call. So, okay, that's really important. I really can't emphasize that enough. Okay, so that's the prep. Then the facilitator notes, these are just kind of a walkthrough of the meeting, and it kind of tells you in the beginning, what the objectives are, how to prepare again for the meeting, what the handouts would be, and then what the products are. So out of this meeting, you're going to have group norms and then the benefit statement. So, and then here's the agenda, but this time we've put in notes to you about tips for how to conduct a certain part of the meeting, things that could go wrong, things that are hard to explain, resistance that people might be feeling but they're not expressing. So make sure you read through these tips. That's kind of important that you've thought about these things before you go into that meeting. So, okay, so that's that. Then for this meeting, we've given you 2 posters. So they're going to come out as, of course, 8.5 by 11s, but this is the norms poster. So you could do a couple things with this. I like to just either blow these up, go to Kinko's or whatever, or FedEx Kinko's, and blow these up onto large poster size so that one of the steering team members can be facilitating while the other one's writing down what people say. Again, if people see you writing down what they say, they know they're heard, and then that's a meeting that's worth coming to because their voice was important. So the other way you could do it is you could just put this up on the screen, and as people are saying things, one person would be facilitating and the other one's typing whatever the norms are going to be. Okay, so that's the norms poster. And then the other poster is the benefits brainstorm poster. And that's, again, you could blow this up and have a marker and write ideas in here, or you could just put it up on the screen, and as somebody's facilitating, another steering team member is writing down. So what are the benefits for students? Students will gain knowledge about careers, or whatever they come up with. Okay, so, and as we go through that benefits brainstorm, you'll see we're going to look at benefits for students, teachers, administrators, parents, and the workforce. So, the community there. Okay, that's that. And then we've given you, we always give you a sample of what the product will look like. So here's what this might look like after you're all finished. So benefits for students, benefits for teachers, and this is kind of a summary of what lots of different schools have said. So, okay. Then the very last thing is tasks following meeting 1, and this is always really important to look at. So tasks following meeting 1, we're going to take your benefit statement, we're going to put it online, we're going to take the minutes from your meeting, put that online, and we're going to print and send the minutes to the advisory council members. So that could be as an email attachment or whatever. Again, just to keep them engaged because they have another touch point with you after the meeting. Then sometimes we'll give you a prep for meeting 2. And I do want to kind of pause and slow down on this a little bit because there is a prep that we need to do before we get into your October meeting. So we need you to get a copy of CBS's 60 Minutes segment that is called Lorraine Monroe's Doctrine. So you can do that 2 ways. It's no longer available from CBS. You can borrow a copy from us, so just call our office and we'll send that out, and then when you're finished with it, send it back to us. That's a VHS copy. Or you can go to YouTube, Somebody Not Us posted this CBS segment as 2 different YouTube videos. So you need to be thinking about, how am I going to get this for my October meeting? If you want to borrow it from us in VHS format, just make sure that, like in the next week or so, that you ask us for that and tell us when you'll return it to us. Okay, so that is the manual. So again, and you'll see, for each of our meetings, there's the vision meeting, goals. It's always the same way, handouts and tools, handouts and tools. Okay, that is that section. Debbie, any questions that have come up?
We have one question that asks, we're doing the benefits in the Council 1 meeting, correct?
That is correct. It's going to be the last part of your council meeting after you introduce all the terminology and what is school counseling, and hopefully people are like, oh, we never knew counselors did that. And this would be so cool if our counselors could do more of that. And then they'll talk about the benefits at the end. Yes, correct. Okay, so let's actually go through that meeting. So I'm going to open up that PowerPoint. So this is the actual PowerPoint that you'll use with your council. And I'm just going to go through it as though I were you and you are a council member. Kind of. I'm going to go through pretty fast, a lot faster than you'll go through. Okay, so the first thing we're doing with everyone is we're saying, welcome, we're so glad you're here, thank you for giving your time, etc. And then we'd like you all to introduce yourselves, and you all are a little bit different from each other. You have different perspectives that you bring to the table, and I'd give some examples, so some of you might have the perspective of a third grade parent or a fourth grade parent or the business community or a certain ethnic group or whatever. So as you look at yourself, what perspective, what maybe unique perspective do you bring to the table? Who do you represent at this table? So, and then everybody's going around and they're introducing themselves and telling their perspectives, and you're, writing them all down. Okay, so here's our agenda for the meeting. We're going to do an intro of what is school counseling, and then we're going to talk about this year. We're going to look at the organizational structure that we'll be using as we design our school counseling program. We'll be looking at the process. I'll show you real quickly the portfolio that we're using online that we've been provided with, a bunch of templates. And then also at the end of all this, we're going to qualify for a couple of awards, so we'll talk about that briefly. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to look at brainstorming what are the benefits of school counseling. So as we talk today, you might be thinking and jot yourself some notes that you can bring up at the end of the meeting about, what are some of the benefits of school counseling to students and to administrators and parents and community members, business. So be thinking about that as we go through, because we're going to chat about that at the end. Okay, so then you'll get into, here's the foundational beliefs, and I'm not going to go through this again. This slide I wanted to put in because most people's perspective of school counseling is that school counseling does not serve every student. It tends to be, people think, oh, the counselors work with the troublemakers, they work with the kids from very affluent families who are trying to get into the best colleges, and they maybe work with special ed kids who have an annual case review, So in other words, school counselors are only working with kids who get referred into them, either referred by their parent, the students refer themselves, or they're referred by a teacher. And so what we're trying to establish on this slide is that the school counseling program that we're setting up through RSC is for every student in the building, that we're helping every single student make sound choices. So, okay, and then we're looking at the terminology. So, we're talking about there's 4 different kinds of counseling activities, and we'll go through each of them real quickly. So the first one is guidance, and then we're defining what, guidance are activities to help all students gain knowledge. And when we're doing a guidance activity, we're teaching knowledge. It might be educational knowledge about colleges or financial aid. It could be about careers, could be about social personal things, bullying. So we're helping kids make good decisions by teaching that knowledge. So because this is teaching, there's a lot of different providers. Sometimes parents teach kids about these things. Sometimes teachers could. School counselors, of course, and then community members can also guide the community's youth. So in guidance activities, we're in teaching mode. I like use the word teaching here because everybody understands what teaching is, where the word guidance is kind of fuzzy. So I'm trying to establish that guidance is teaching. Guidance is about sharing knowledge. Guidance is not counseling, it's about sharing knowledge. Okay, then we're giving some examples. We're saying just like, and I like to tie this into math and English. I'll say, you know, just like a math teacher has a math curriculum, we have a guidance curriculum. And just like math teachers have subjects like geometry or algebra, we have subjects. You know, in school counseling, we help kids develop in their academic development, their career development, and their personal social development. And we have standards, just like in math, we have math standards. There are guidance standards, so then maybe highlight a couple of these. Okay, so that's that. Then we're also, again, trying to establish that we're in teaching mode. So, you know, you might say, just like a math teacher has lesson plans, you know, in school counseling, we have lesson plans too. So a lesson might be on learning styles, and, you know, here's the materials required, here's the procedure, here's the indicator that we're teaching to, that, you know, it works just like math and just like English, that we're in teaching mode when we're doing guidance activities. So for a lot of parents, they don't realize, and a lot of community members and teachers don't realize that there's a lot of teaching that counselors do, and so this is, I think, important to establish. So also, we're trying to establish that the teaching can be one-on-one. So you could say, you know, once a year or twice a year, I call every student into my office, and we do a one-on-one lesson where I'm teaching students about scheduling or about financial aid or whatever. You know, I'm teaching them how to pick their courses, select their courses to align with their career goal or their educational goals. And then also to say, you know, and then there's also another setting is in the classroom. So sometimes the counselors will go into a classroom to teach a small group, or this could be teachers that as part of a teacher advisor program are teaching, or this could be a community mentor that has brought together a group of students like at a boys club or Girl Scout troop and is teaching the content. So, okay. So, yeah, so I got ahead of myself there, but yeah, so counselors, community members, there's lots of different teachers that can teach these things. Okay, second type is counseling, and again, the word here that I emphasize is some students, so counseling activities help some students. Research has shown that if your school is typical, about 1 out of 5 or 20% of your students have a personal or social issue that's interfering with their ability to learn. So counseling, though, is where it is not provided by lots of different people. It's only provided by licensed professionals, so licensed school counselors, licensed social workers, licensed school psychs. However, there are different levels of counseling. Sometimes kids just need a friendly listener, and in that case, it's okay not to have a licensed school counselor. So what we're doing, that'll come up in a minute. Again, I kind of got ahead of myself, sorry. So, and then we're establishing, because, you know, if a parent of a well-adjusted student, they may not realize that there's all kinds of issues that kids are bringing to school, and that we need to help kids address these issues so that they're ready to learn. So, okay. Another thing we can point out is that during RSC, if you don't have one already, you'll be creating a student assistance team that receives referrals from folks about kids that maybe need services in counseling. They review the cases, they recommend interventions, and then they follow up to see if the interventions are working, and if we need to change interventions or the problem's gone, we can now alleviate the intervention. So, and these are the typical team members of that student assistance team. So you could say either we have one or we're about to create one. So, and then these are the different levels of interventions. And normally when people think of counseling, they're thinking about individual counseling, group counseling, crisis counseling, consultation referrals. And those are the things that we think should only be provided by a licensed provider that has both the education, but maybe even just as important is the supervised practice experience. So your internship or your practice experience that you've done is really important, we think, before a professional should be able to do these things with kids. But then there's also just friendly listening and information sharing. So that could be a peer helper or a teacher advisor, community mentor. These are also trained people, and part of the training, besides in in listening skills needs to be the limits of confidentiality. So these are trained people. They're friendly listeners, but they also understand the limits of confidentiality so that they know at what point do they need to bring in one of these licensed folks. So, okay. And then finally, the number one level intervention is just something that someone with no training can do. So changing a seat assignment or starting a homework log or whatever. So different levels of intervention with student assistance or counseling. But again, we think that when we're dealing with the ongoing individual group counseling, crisis counseling, consultation, that's something that only licensed professionals should be providing. So, okay. Third type of activity is advocacy. And again, we've defined these before, so I'm not going to read through these slides, but just reminding folks that when we advocate, counselors advocate for students, we can advocate for groups of students, like, we might be advocating for low-income kids, or we can advocate for individual students, like when we go to a case conference and we're there as the student advocate. So, okay. Management, we're reminding people that these things just don't happen. They have to be planned and managed, and so management is all the behind-the-scenes things that make it necessary for the school counseling program. And you'll hear the tone of my voice. I really emphasize school counseling program because later I want to bring in the non-program management things. So these tasks that are school counseling tasks are the things that happen behind the scenes to make the school counseling program run smoothly. Okay, and then management tasks, program development, personal development, networking, evaluation, and then you can tell them, like right now I'm doing program management because I'm meeting with you to design my program. Okay, and then we have these non-program tasks. So a non-program task are things that activities that do not help students master guidance standard. They do not help students overcome a personal or social problem that's interfering with learning. So if they don't master a standard, if it's an activity that doesn't helps kids master a standard or overcome a personal social problem, then it is non-program. Here are all types of non-program activities that school counselors are asked to do often. And then, you can adjust this so that it's more meets your school, or you can say, I'm really lucky in in our schools, I don't have to do record keeping, I don't have to do scheduling, but in other schools, there's a lot of this that goes on that takes counselors away from kids and parents. So, and then we want to introduce the idea of a program balance. So you can say to your counsel, later in this process, we're going to talk about what percentage of our time do we want our counselors to be spending with guidance activities, counseling, advocacy, management, and non-program. And then we'll look at our actual time percentages. So you can tell them, right now we're keeping daily time logs, and in the early spring we'll come back and we'll be able to tell you, this is how we're spending our time, and then we'll look at the match there and talk about that. So, okay. So, so that's like introducing the terminology and what is counseling, the 4 different parts, and then the non-program activities. So then we're going to move on to accountability. And what we want to say to the council and to ourselves is that we're going to be accountable for helping kids make targeted choices, and maybe give a couple examples, like, we might decide as a council that we want kids to choose to talk to their parents about financial aid, or we want them to choose to turn in their homework or whatever. So we're going to identify those targeted choices, not a lot of them, but just the things that we really think are going to make a difference, and then we'll hold ourselves accountable for making sure that more kids make those choices. Okay, and then people will typically, the question that comes in their minds, well, how you know? So we're going to say, we've already given students a baseline survey to see if they've done these things. So, we're going to go into this knowing what percentage of our students have taken a career interest inventory, have written a high school course plan, have submitted a FAFSA. And then these will become our goal areas, some of these, and then we'll have follow-up data later. So we can also count other things besides the survey data. So like on career interest inventory, maybe on the day that we give that that inventory, we'll just have students log in that they took the career interest inventory, and then we've got that log that we can count. Or on high school course plan, I can open my file drawer and count up how many plans I have. So, so there's other things that we can count besides the survey data. Okay, that ends meeting 1, or the first half of the 2-hour meeting. Then we're going to very quickly talk about organizational structure. So you're going to say that, you know, there's a steering team. They facilitate 6 meetings of the council, and then we're going to use your input to develop this school counseling program. So your input is really important. And I like to say here, because without your input, the whole program would be based on the perspectives of a white middle-class female. And I know that that's not a good thing. So we want all of your voices to the table, so we really design a program that meets the needs of all kids. So the steering team are the worker bees. And then the council, your responsibility is to attend 6 meetings, to provide input as we design the program, and then as we implement the program, you'll be providing feedback on how it went. And then if you want to, down the road, you know, we hope that you'll become ambassadors for our program. You don't have to, but you're going to really understand our program. So if you think it's a good thing, you know, you might decide you want to be an ambassador for our program. So, okay, so again, we're emphasizing that we're telling the council you're the thinker bees. You're not a worker bee, so there's nothing that you have to do between these meetings. You just need to come to the meetings and think and give us your ideas. So the implementers of the programs, especially those guidance activities, it's not just the counselors. So part of the organizational structure is that, you know, down the road, there may be some guidance activities that you decide you want to do with your children as a parent. There will be activities that the counselors can do, of course, or we may decide these are some activities that teachers are going to do in homeroom or through an advisor-advisee program. And then community organizations, like, you know, if you've got somebody from a business, you may say, you know, you might want to get involved with helping your kids learn how to interview or helping them understand why it's so important to take math classes. So the implementers don't have to be just the school counselors. We want to plant that seed now and then let it sprout later. Okay, here's the process. And again, we're talking about how we're going to start with achievement goals. Then we're going to go with we're going to say what choices or what practices do students need to put in place in order to reach the achievement goals that we want. And then we'll design guidance and counseling goals, guidance and counseling activities to help students make those choices. So we'll take them into the process. So these are things we've already done, we've gotten ready, and here we are at the first meeting, intro. Then you'll walk through very quickly each of these steps, kind of tell them what's happening. And again, the purpose of this is not that they understand the process totally and that they, you know, get each step and that they could take a quiz on the process. What we want to do here is just to help them understand that there is a process, and every month is going to build on the month before it. So we're just kind of, you know, for people that are the big picture people, we want them to see how this all fits together. And you can say to people, if you're not a big picture person, it's all you have to do is worry about today, which is just the introduction. So, okay. Then you're explaining to the council that as we do this work, there's an online program portfolio that we're completing. So, you know, when we work on the belief statements today, those are going to end up getting put into the system. Later, when we work on the vision and the goals, that'll end up all getting put into the system. And out of that system, a portfolio will emerge that at the end of this will be submitted, if you're planning to, submitted to the American School Counselor Association for the National Recognized ASCA Model Program Award. And you can share with people that in most states, there are only 2 or 3 ramp schools. There's over 100, 120 something in Indiana, but it's very rare across the country. This is really quite a prestigious award. And most states only have 2 or 3 ramp schools. So, okay, and then, excuse me, we'll also be submitting this to the Indiana Department of Education for the Indiana Gold Star School Counseling Award. When we get that, we'll get this neat little logo that we'll put on our letterhead, and you know, on our website, and it will show folks that we have a data-driven, vision-based school counseling program that is really focused on student needs. Okay, so now we're into the two activities. First activity is, and at this point I would even say to folks, you know, we've been talking a lot at you just to introduce all the terminology and the overview of what all this is, and this will never happen again. From now on, it's going to be us throwing out data and then listening to what you think about it. So after this, we'll always be in listen mode, and we're going to start that right now. So first thing we want to listen to is what do you want our group norms to be like as we're working together? You know, what kind of practices do you want to see, and maybe give a couple, like being on time or not interrupting each other or having an open mind or whatever. This conversation, I found that sometimes there's a big pause right here, so I like to put in a couple of examples. You might have somebody else on your steering team kind of primed that if there's a big pause and nobody says anything, they can jump in with a couple. Once it gets going, though, people tend to come up with, you know, another way you can ask this is, what are the things that bug you about meetings, you know, when you go to them, and, you know, turn that into something positive, like, you know, let's always focus on kids, or, you know, let's be on time, let's not interrupt each other, let's turn off our cell phones, you know, whatever it is, what bugs you when you go to meetings, then you can turn those into positive comments. So, but once the conversation gets going, it tends to flow. Okay, then we're going to do a consensus check. So we're just going to say, okay, can everybody agree that these are the norms we're going to live by as we meet together these 6 times? Everybody says yes, and we're good to go. Okay, so then our second brainstorm and final brainstorm is, what are the benefits now of school counseling for students, teachers, administrators, parents, and local economy? So on this one, there's a screen here. Again, you can use the posters, but, you know, if you wanted to use the screen, you would just, you know, start typing in the benefits here. So the first one was on student benefits. How does this help kids? How does this help teachers? How does this help administrators, parents, and how does this help the local economy? So it's just a brainstorm. Couple of tips here that we found have been really helpful. One is, when I'm facilitating this discussion, a lot of times when I put that very first slide up, there is like a huge silence, and I always get really kind of tense and I want to jump in and say something. I force myself to count to 30 silently to myself, waiting for someone to say something. Finally, the silence gets kind of uncomfortable and someone will say something. And as soon as that breaks the ice, then someone else will say something. But, you know, if I jump in right away, nobody has to talk. So I make myself count to 30. The other thing that's really helpful that I try to do on this one is whoever's writing down the words, if you can write down the exact words that the person said, that shows them that they were heard and that they're not heard through your interpretation of what they said, but it's actually their words that went up on the screen or went up on the poster. So if you can use their exact words, that's really helpful with brainstorming to let people know that they're heard. Okay, so we're working through those slides, and then that's it. And, you know, it's telling people thank you. We're going to take all of your input and we'll work it into our benefit statement. That'll be the first, you know, thing that we put into the system as our part of our portfolio. And thanks for coming, and remind them in the next meeting, and you're good to go. So, okay, I'm going to pause there. Let's look for questions. Then we'll go to the online system. We have about 5 minutes left, and that should just be about right. Debbie, questions?
We have no questions at this point.
Okay. See, that all made sense? Okay, if not, type that question in or call Debbie afterwards. Okay, so I'm on the process page now. I'm going to scroll down to the, oops, I went past it, to the September activity, Introduce Your Advisory Council to RSC. So you registered for the webinar. Oh, I wanted to show you something too. I'm sorry, before we begin that, I'm in as New Albany Senior High School, and I just wanted to show you that on their, on their advisory council. I'm going to pull up that report real quickly. Look what a nice job they did. So here's their advisory council. We have some students. We've got parents. There's a college administrator from University of Louisville. Here is a Southern Indiana leadership program coordinator, Open Door Youth Services, Voc Rehab, another college administrator, middle school counselor. So we've got the the feeder school represented, so you can do some vertical curriculum articulation, junior achievement, social worker, so Forward Next Generation Learning Network, another college administrator, aide to the mayor of New Albany. Yeah, so they just did a really nice job of the different types of folks. They're going to have a really rich discussion. So if you're one of those schools that haven't put together your advisory council yet, New Albany is showing you that it can be done. So, and several of you had very rich advisory councils. It wasn't just New Albany. I just kind of opened that one to begin with, but very, very nice work. Very, very nice. So, okay, so now let's go to this first meeting with that advisory council. And we're here. So we're going to watch the webcast. That's what we're recording right now. So if you want to go back and watch it later, it will be right here. Conduct the advisory council meeting 1. If you click on that, it takes you to the manual page. Then enter the benefits statement. So here's a tool. If you click this, it's going to be the example of what that would look like. And then here's where you enter them. So benefits for students, and then you would just type them in. We've given you a note up here that our online system, if you're going to do a bulleted list, use asterisks for the bullets. So why it helps students understand careers, or what are the benefits for kids. We give you save buttons all over the place. Every time you come across a save button, please hit it. Okay, so you just pull that out, and after you've entered all the benefits, then if you print the report, right now it's going to be blank because we don't have any in, but all those things will appear here. Okay, so that's the benefits. Enter your meeting 1 minutes. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to put the date of the meeting in, who's writing the minutes, and then you would enter the minutes. I think what most people like to do is they'll create these in a Word document and then just cut and paste into this. So okay, so that's the minutes, and I'll give you some rubric items for the minutes in a minute. That's what we're doing right now. So let's look at the rubric items. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Oops, come back here. And this will be the last thing we do. Let's see, slideshow, print slide. Okay. So we did the process page, and then here's the submission. So in your benefits statement, what we're going to be looking for is, did you list the benefits of school counseling for those 5 different groups? So students, teachers, administrators, parents, workforce. Okay, pretty simple. If you like the way that we've worded some of the benefits in our sample benefit statement, that is absolutely fine for you to just use the wording the way we've done it. We don't care. If we've captured an idea the same way that you have that idea and you like our wording, just use our wording. That doesn't matter. So in the minutes, here are 3 things that we're looking for. The minutes contain the names of those present and the groups they represent. That's really helpful to show us if you're having a broadly based conversation. And again, we're especially looking for community members, and especially business and economic development. Chamber of Commerce, we're really looking, like we just saw for New Albany, we're really looking for a broad group. Then the minutes present summaries of the activities and the discussion. So what did you do in that meeting? And some summaries of the discussion. And then this next one is a little unique to our minutes, but we'd like you to reference specific people and what they said. So you might say, Jim Green mentioned that one benefit to the business community would be blah, blah, blah. Or Jane Doe said that a benefit to her as a parent is, and then blah, blah, blah. So this is, again, we're trying to help the council understand that we're listening. And if Jim Green sees in the minutes, oh my gosh, they not only heard me, but what I said was so important that it ended up in the minutes and it's in print. You know, Jim Green's going to come back to the next meeting. And and that also shows everybody else that you're listening. So I would not, write down what everybody said verbatim, but if you can just take, 3, 4 people and add in the minutes what they said, because it was something, that you thought was really interesting or whatever, or it's something from someone you want to make sure comes back to the next meeting, that's really, we found helpful. So there's 2 things that really tend to get people to come back. 3 things. One is that you're listening and they're talking, you're listening. 2 is that they perceive that they're there representing a certain perspective. 3 is that you call them the day before on the phone, and then 4 is that you've referenced what they've said in the minutes. So what a few people have said in the minutes, so they know, again, they know you're listening. So okay, then just a heads up. We don't need to worry about this now, but in May, we're going to ask you to upload all 6 agendas. So just keep in mind that the agenda that you use, that not now, but in May, you'll be uploading those. So, okay. Let me pause there and see if there's any final questions. Debbie, anything come in?
I see no questions, so everybody must be good.
Okay. So just a reminder, here's the dates for our future webinars. So the next one will be at the end of September. I'm sorry, the next one will be in the beginning of October, where we will be prepping for the October meeting on visioning. So October 4th, we'll see everybody at 2:30, and we'll go from there. And then finally, don't forget that Debbie is here to help you. We have had so many schools say nice things about Debbie's support and how nice it is to have somebody, there that they can call or email and get a quick response from. So please, please use Debbie. And then remember too that if you start to get behind, that we are actively monitoring. We're not just sitting back waiting for you to submit. We're actively monitoring. So if you start to get behind, don't be surprised if Debbie doesn't call and say, can we help some way, or is there something that Debbie can do to help you get going, or are you confused about something? So think about Debbie as another member of your steering team. So okay. Debbie, anything you want to add before we close?
Nope, I have one question that came in that says, how much funding do we need to do this program?
Absolutely none. So what you'll be limited to is activities that don't cost any money, but think of all the things that you can do that cost nothing. It costs nothing to tell students how important math is as a gatekeeper course in their future. So there's a ton of stuff that you can do that costs nothing. If you do want to do something that costs funding, what in the process, we're not going to let funding be a limiter at this point, because remember, there's that step where we're going to try to find funding. And what we have found in many, many schools is that the Kiwanis Club rep is sitting there and they're going, you need $50? We can donate that. And they'll say things like, your whole budget is only $400? We can give you another $400 in a jiff. I mean, to a Fortune 500 company, $400 is nothing. So, so we don't want funding to be a limiter, because we think that there'll be ways to get it later, and that'll become part of the process that you go through. We also know that in some schools you have a budget, just like the math department has a budget, the school counseling department has a budget. And in other schools, there is no budget whatsoever. Every time the counselor wants to do something, you have to go to the principal and say, can I have 2 cents for this? If that's the case, that will be fine. You don't have to have a formal budget, but you'll create a funding proposal instead of a budget if you're in a school that doesn't have any money. So I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but the bottom line is you don't have to have any money whatsoever. And, my personal opinion is that 99.9% of the activities that we do with kids is about talking, and that doesn't cost anything. So, okay. Any other questions, Debbie? Anything you want to add?
Nope, I think all is good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we wish everybody luck, and with that first meeting. Don't forget you can call Debbie, and again, if it's like the day before or the minute before the meeting and all of a sudden you can't remember something, call Debbie and have her walk you through whatever. Don't forget that you've got that planning sheet in the tools section. But we're here to help, and whatever you need us to do, please, please, please ask us. So, okay, with that, we'll close for the day, and we'll talk to everybody next month. Good luck, everybody.